I used to think my life was solid, stable, predictable in the best way. My wife, Emily, and I had been together for 12 years, married for 10. We were that couple people admired, career-driven, deeply in love, or so I thought. We built a life together, planned for the future, and celebrated last spring when she told me she was pregnant. I felt like the luckiest man alive. Looking back, maybe I should have noticed the cracks. She started acting distant, little things like brushing off my hugs or staying late at work without explanation. But I chalked it up to pregnancy hormones and the stress of her demanding job in marketing. It all came crashing down one random Thursday afternoon. I was scrolling through Facebook at work, killing time before a meeting, when I saw Emily's post. "Happy birthday, Ryan. Can't believe it's been so long since we first met. You'll always be special to me. Red heart." Ryan, her ex-boyfriend from college. A guy I hadn't heard about in years. Her words felt too familiar, too intimate. My stomach twisted. I knew I couldn't ignore it. Later that day, Emily texted me, saying she was shopping for baby clothes at a local boutique. She even sent me photos, tiny, adorable onesies and blankets in soft pastels. My heart ached with love and pride. But something didn't sit right. On a hunch, I opened Facebook again and checked Ryan's profile. He'd been tagged in a post at a trendy downtown cafe, one I knew Emily loved. The timestamp matched the exact time she'd sent me the baby clothes photos. I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. I didn't want to believe it. Maybe it was a coincidence. Maybe she ran into him. But deep down, I knew. This wasn't just some harmless, happy birthday post. It was something darker, something that would shatter everything I thought I knew about my life. I tried to convince myself I was overthinking. Maybe Emily had just run into Ryan by chance. But the nagging feeling wouldn't go away. That night, I watched her closely during dinner. She was cheerful, talking about the baby's nursery and some work presentation she'd nailed. Her smile seemed real, too real. But there was something about her eyes, distant, calculating, like she was playing a part she'd rehearsed too many times. After dinner, she went to take a bath while I cleaned up. Her phone buzzed on the counter. Normally, I wouldn't snoop, but I was already drowning in suspicion. The message preview read, "Can't stop thinking about today. You looked stunning. Same time next week?" The sender's name? Ryan. I froze, feeling ice spread through my chest. My hands trembled as I unlocked her phone, a password I'd known for years but had never thought I'd use like this. The messages between them stretched back months. Flirty, familiar, intimate. But then I saw something that made my knees buckle. "Ryan, are you sure it's mine?" "Emily, I took the test, it's yours. Jack can't know." The world tilted, and for a second, I thought I might pass out. The baby, the one I'd been dreaming about, decorating a room for, wasn't mine. It was his. I put the phone down carefully, like it might explode. My head buzzed with static. This couldn't be real. Emily wasn't capable of something this cruel, was she? I heard the water shut off upstairs. Her soft footsteps padded toward our bedroom. I stood frozen in the kitchen, gripping the edge of the counter so hard my knuckles turned white. Rage, betrayal, heartbreak. They crashed into me all at once. Emily came downstairs, wrapped in her fluffy white robe, smiling like nothing had happened, like she wasn't destroying me piece by piece. "Hey, babe," she said sweetly. "Everything okay?" I swallowed the bile rising in my throat and forced a smile. "Yeah, everything's fine." But inside, I was already plotting. That night, I lay next to Emily, staring at the ceiling while she slept peacefully, her breathing soft and even. I wondered how she could be so calm, so unaffected, while my entire world was collapsing around me. The next morning, I woke up with one clear thought. I needed proof. Concrete, undeniable evidence. If I confronted her too soon, she'd lie. She was too good at it. I couldn't let her spin the story, couldn't let her gaslight me into thinking I was crazy. While she was in the shower, I quietly grabbed her phone from the nightstand and forwarded Ryan's messages to my own number. My heart pounded the entire time, adrenaline burning through me. I needed more. Later that day, I told her I was working late and hired a private investigator. His name was Mike, gruff, no nonsense, exactly the kind of guy I needed. I explained everything. The Facebook post, the messages, the pregnancy. He didn't flinch. "Consider it done," he said. The next few days felt like walking on broken glass. Emily kept up her perfect wife act, cooking my favorite meals, cuddling with me on the couch, talking about baby names. Every touch felt like acid on my skin, but I played along. Mike called me after only 3 days. "You're not gonna like this," he said flatly. He sent me photos, Emily and Ryan holding hands at a park, sitting close in a dimly lit restaurant, kissing outside a hotel. The timestamps lined up perfectly with the baby shopping trips she'd been texting me about. Then came the worst part. "Mike, you need to see this." He emailed me surveillance footage from the hotel. My breath caught when I saw them walking into the lobby together, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. They spoke to the front desk clerk like they were regulars. "Room 308. The same room every time. I slammed my laptop shut, my heart pounding in my chest. This wasn't just a fling. This was the life. A double life she'd built behind my back. I knew what I had to do. After seeing the surveillance footage, something inside me snapped. Every loving moment we'd shared, every future plan we'd made, felt like a cruel joke. I wasn't going to be her fool anymore. That evening, I acted normal, even brought home takeout from her favorite Italian place. She greeted me with that same dazzling smile, kissed my cheek, and asked about my day. "It was fine," I lied smoothly. "Just busy." Over dinner, she gushed about a baby shower her friends were planning. She looked radiant, glowing with excitement, or maybe triumph. After all, she thought she'd gotten away with it. As she talked about nursery themes, I couldn't help but wonder, was she imagining Ryan's face when she thought about the baby? Did she picture him, not me, standing by her side in the delivery room? I clenched my fists under the table, forcing a smile. Sounds perfect. Later that night, while she was asleep, I made 2 phone calls. The first was to Mike, instructing him to dig deeper. Bank records, hidden accounts, anything. I needed leverage. The second call was to my lawyer. The next morning, I played the perfect husband. I made her breakfast, kissed her goodbye, and went to work like nothing was wrong. But inside, I was simmering. By noon, Mike had more news. "She's been using a secret credit card," he said. "Hotel stays, expensive dinners, even gifts for him." I felt the floor tilt beneath me. Every charge was a reminder that she wasn't just lying. She was financing their twisted fantasy life with our money. Then came the final blow. She booked a weekend getaway, Mike added. "This Friday." Same hotel. My mind reeled. She was still seeing him, still stringing me along while planning her next romantic escape. I thanked Mike and hung up, my hands trembling. This was it, the final betrayal. I wasn't going to wait for her to decide when I was worth telling the truth. I was going to end this on my terms. The weekend trip Emily had planned with Ryan felt like a twisted gift, a final opportunity to catch them red-handed. I didn't want speculation or excuses. I needed a moment they couldn't lie their way out of. Mike and I worked out the details. The plan was simple but brutal. I'd show up at the hotel when they least expected it. The front desk clerk, now on my payroll thanks to Mike, would give me a room key. Friday came fast. Emily kissed me goodbye that morning, claiming she was meeting friends for a spa weekend. I played my part, hugging her like a devoted husband. "Have fun, babe," I said softly. "You deserve it." She smiled, warm, trusting, then walked out the door without a second glance. The moment she was gone, I grabbed my bag and drove to the hotel. Mike had already confirmed their arrival. Room 308. Same as always. I checked into the room next door and waited, heart pounding like a war drum. Hours crawled by until I heard muffled voices and laughter from the other side of the wall. Them. I clenched my jaw, adrenaline flooding my system. I waited until the laughter died down before grabbing the spare keycard. My hands shook, but my resolve didn't falter. I swiped the card. The door clicked open with a soft beep. The scene inside burned into my memory forever. Emily tangled in the sheets, her hair a mess. Ryan stretched out beside her, both of them startled, frozen like deer in headlights. "Hey there," I said coldly, stepping fully into the room. "Hope I'm not interrupting." Emily gasped, yanking the blanket up to cover herself. "Jack, what are you doing here?" What am I doing here? I repeated, letting out a bitter laugh. I could ask you the same. Ryan scrambled to sit up, his face pale. Man, this isn't what it looks like. Shut up, I snapped, my voice low and deadly. You've said enough. Emily stammered, her eyes wild with panic. It's not what you think. I can explain. Save it. My voice was razor sharp. I know everything. Everything. Her face crumpled, realization hitting her like a freight train. I reached into my pocket and pulled out the crumpled ultrasound photo she'd framed so proudly at home. I threw it on the bed between them. Is this his kid? I asked, my voice dangerously quiet. Emily's lips trembled. For the first time, she couldn't lie. Yes, she whispered. Silence fell, a still, suffocating thing. I nodded slowly, breathing hard, feeling both destroyed and weirdly liberated. Good, I said coldly. Because you're his problem now? I turned and walked out, leaving her sobs echoing behind me. I walked out of that hotel room and never looked back. The sound of Emily's broken sobs followed me down the hallway, but they didn't matter anymore. Whatever we'd been, whatever I had been to her was gone. Mike was waiting by the entrance. He gave me a sharp nod, no questions asked. I handed him a thick envelope with his final payment. You need anything else? He asked. No, my voice was hollow. It's done. I drove home in a haze, hands gripping the wheel so hard my knuckles turned white. The memories hit me like waves. Her laugh, our anniversary dinners, the first time she told me she was pregnant. All lies. A carefully crafted performance to keep me blind while she built a future with someone else. I pulled into the driveway of our house, the place where we dreamed of raising our child, and sat there, staring at the front door like it belonged to someone else. I couldn't stay there. Not anymore. I went inside, grabbed a suitcase, and stuffed it with essentials. Clothes, my laptop, the few personal items that still felt like mine. As I zipped the bag shut, I noticed her framed maternity photo on the dresser, her hand resting protectively over her stomach. My chest twisted, anger and grief battling inside me. I couldn't bring myself to smash it. Not yet. I left it there, like a marker on a grave. Before leaving, I made one last call to my lawyer. File the papers, I said. Full divorce. No custody fights. She gets nothing. Understood, he replied without hesitation. As I walked out, I caught my reflection in the hallway mirror. I looked wrecked, a hollowed-out version of the man I used to be. But there was something else there too, something sharp and unyielding. Survival. I didn't care where I went that night. I just needed to be away. I drove aimlessly for hours, the road stretching into a blur. The night felt endless, thick with memories I couldn't outrun. Emily's tear-streaked face haunted me, but I shoved the image away. She was the architect of her own ruin. Eventually, exhaustion forced me off the highway. I checked into a small, nondescript motel, just 4 walls and a bed. No memories. No lies. Sleep was impossible. I lay there staring at the ceiling, mind spiraling through every betrayal, every lie she'd fed me while looking me dead in the eyes. How many times had she sat across from me at dinner, pretending we were a happy couple while texting him under the table? The next morning, I woke up to my phone vibrating, her name flashing on the screen. For a moment, instinct kicked in. I almost answered. Old habits die hard. But I couldn't hear her voice, not yet. Not while her lies still poisoned every thought. I let it ring until it stopped. Seconds later, a text came through. Jack, please, we need to talk. I'm sorry. I never meant for this to happen. I stared at the words, my jaw tightening. She didn't mean for this to happen. She'd meant it every time she walked into that hotel room. Every time she looked me in the eye and lied. I blocked her number. Later that day, I called my lawyer again. How fast can you push the divorce through? I'll expedite it, he promised. Given the infidelity and the paternity situation, you've got leverage. Paternity. The word stabbed deep. Also, he continued, I suggest a DNA test, just to legally confirm what you already know. The thought twisted my stomach. I didn't need a test. I'd seen the messages, heard the truth straight from her mouth. But he was right. This wasn't just about betrayal anymore. It was about closing every loophole, every door she could use to crawl back into my life. Set it up, I said. The next few weeks were a haze of paperwork, legal meetings, and hollow routines. My house was her space now. I stayed in a rental downtown, cold and impersonal, but free of ghosts. The DNA results came in 2 weeks later, sealed in an official envelope. I stared at it for a long time, heart pounding like a war drum. When I finally opened it, the words hit like a sledgehammer. Probability of paternity, 0%. It was official. The baby was his. The words probability of paternity, 0% burned into my mind. Seeing it in black and white shattered the last thread of denial I hadn't realized I was holding on to. There was no room for maybe or what if. The baby I had been planning a life around wasn't mine. I sat there for what felt like hours, gripping the paper, the weight of finality pressing down on my chest. This wasn't just a betrayal. It was a death. The death of the future I'd imagined, of the family I thought we'd be. That night, I allowed myself to break. I smashed a glass against the wall, let out a guttural scream that tore through my throat. Rage and sorrow twisted together until I collapsed onto the floor, breath ragged. But grief wasn't going to fix this. Emily had built her life on lies, but now, I held the truth and the power that came with it. The next morning, I met with my lawyer, Eric, and laid everything on the table: the affair, the fake pregnancy story, and the DNA results. His expression hardened as he took notes. "We'll file for divorce under grounds of adultery and fraud," he said. "Given the paternity issue, you have no legal obligation toward the child." The words hit harder than expected. The child. I hated how cold it sounded, clinical, detached. But what else could it be? Eric continued. "You can also sue for reimbursement of marital funds if she used joint accounts for expenses related to the affair." I thought about the hotel receipts, the gifts, the dinners she'd charged to our credit card while pretending to be out with friends. My jaw clenched. "Do it," I said coldly. "Take her for everything." That same day, Emily's world started crumbling. The court filings were swift and brutal. I froze our shared accounts, canceled her credit cards, and locked down the house's deed, my house, while my lawyer prepared a full financial audit. The next blow came when I contacted her work's HR department. I wasn't petty enough to ruin her career, but I wanted them aware of her extracurricular activities, just in case her personal life spilled into the professional world. By evening, my phone was buzzing nonstop with calls from her and frantic, rambling voicemails. "Jack, please. What's happening? Why are the accounts frozen? Why is there a process server at my office?" Her voice cracked, desperate and broken. Good. I blocked her again. Later that night, Eric called me with an update. "She's been served," he confirmed. "Her lawyer's already pushing for negotiations, but given the evidence we have, she's cornered." I thanked him and hung up, feeling a dark, twisted satisfaction. She'd played me for years, but now she was finally out of moves. The days after Emily got served were a whirlwind of frantic calls from mutual friends and family, all asking the same thing. What the hell happened? I kept my responses cold and vague. Ask Emily. I wasn't about to defend her, or myself. She built this mess. She could live in it. Through my lawyer, I learned she'd moved into a cheap apartment downtown after I legally locked her out of the house. Eric made it clear she can't touch the house or any shared assets until the court rules. I could picture her reaction: panicked, furious, blindsided. She'd always been good at control, playing the caring wife while managing her secret life like a CEO. But now, she was scrambling. It didn't take long before she found a way to reach me through a mutual friend, Lisa, who called under the guise of checking in. "Jack, she's a mess," Lisa said carefully. "I'm not excusing what she did, but she's really struggling. Maybe you should talk to her." I let out a harsh laugh. "You mean after she lied to me for a decade and tried to pass another man's baby off as mine?" Lisa went quiet. She made a mistake." "A mistake?" My voice rose, sharp and bitter. "A mistake is forgetting an anniversary. She lived a double life for years, Lisa. Years." There was silence on the line. Then, quietly, "She's pregnant, Jack. Maybe Maybe she thought she was protecting you. I felt a fresh wave of disgust. Tell her the only thing she's protecting now is her credit score. I hung up, but Lisa's words stuck with me, no matter how hard I tried to shake them. Had Emily really believed she could protect me by lying? By keeping me chained to a life that wasn't mine? The thought gnawed at me. A week later, Eric called with another update. Her lawyer's asking for a settlement discussion. She's desperate to avoid a trial. I almost laughed. Good. Let her sweat. But Eric hesitated. There's something else. What? She's contesting the DNA test. My blood turned to ice. What the hell does that mean? She claims you took the test without her consent, which could complicate things. It's a long shot, but her lawyer's grasping at straws. I gripped the phone tighter. What does she think this will get her? Stalling, mostly, Eric said. But there's one more thing. She's listed Ryan on the paternity affidavit, but he hasn't signed it. I went silent. Jack, Eric continued slowly, if Ryan refuses to claim the child legally, things could get complicated. My mind reeled. If Ryan bailed, Emily might try to force me into some kind of legal responsibility. This wasn't over. Not by a long shot. Eric's warning hit me like a gut punch. If Ryan refused to claim paternity, I could be dragged into a nightmare legal battle. Was that her plan all along? The next day, I called Mike, my private investigator, again. I need you to track Ryan down. Everything. Job, address, known associates. I don't care how much it costs. You got it, Mike replied without hesitation. I wasn't about to let Emily manipulate the system, not after what she'd done. If Ryan thought he could disappear while leaving me holding the bag, he was in for a rude awakening. 3 days later, Mike came through. He lives on the other side of town, he reported. Works at a construction firm, low profile, no social media. But here's the kicker. He's married. I froze. Married? Yep. To a woman named Amanda. They've got 2 kids. The revelation hit like a thunderclap. Ryan wasn't just some wandering ex. He was living a double life too. I mulled it over, weighing my options. Confronting Ryan directly might backfire, especially if Emily had already roped him into her schemes. But Amanda? She deserved to know. That evening, I sat in my car outside Ryan's house, heart pounding. His family's cozy 2-story home sat at the end of a quiet cul-de-sac, white picket fence and all. The perfect picture of suburban bliss. I waited until Amanda came outside to grab the mail. She looked normal, kind, someone who thought her life was stable, safe, just like I had. Summoning every ounce of courage, I got out of the car and approached her. Excuse me, Amanda? I said carefully. She turned, surprised but polite. Yes? My name's Jack. I know this is strange, but I need to talk to you about your husband. Her expression shifted to guarded suspicion. What about Ryan? I took a deep breath, hands shaking. It's about an affair. With my wife. Her face went pale. Is this some kind of sick joke? No. I wish it were. I told her everything. The affair, the pregnancy, the DNA test, the pending legal battle. Her knees buckled halfway through, and I had to steady her as tears streamed down her face. This can't be real, she whispered. He wouldn't. I'm sorry, I said quietly. I thought you deserved to know, before this blows up even worse. Her expression hardened into something fierce and determined. You're sure? I nodded. I have proof. Amanda wiped her face, breathing heavily. Thank you for telling me. I turned to leave, but her next words stopped me cold. You're not the first person to warn me about Ryan. My blood ran cold. What do you mean? Amanda's face darkened. There's been someone else before. A different woman. I thought it was over. This wasn't just about Emily. Ryan had a pattern. The realization burned in my chest like acid. This wasn't just a messy affair. It was a game he'd played before. Amanda's words echoed in my head. You're not the first. Ryan's affair with Emily wasn't some one-time lapse in judgment. It was part of a pattern. He wasn't just a homewrecker. He was a serial liar. The thought made my blood boil. Who was the other woman? I asked carefully. Amanda hesitated. Her expression twisted with anger and hurt. Her name was Rachel, a coworker of his about 2 years ago. Did she contact you? No, her jaw clenched. I found out the hard way, through his phone. Same story. Lies, secret meetings, promises to end it. Her voice cracked, but she powered through. I thought he'd changed. We stood there in tense silence, two strangers bound by betrayal. Amanda wiped her face and squared her shoulders. He won't get away with this, not this time. I nodded slowly. I'm going after him legally. He's trying to dodge paternity. If he thinks he can disappear, he's wrong. Her face hardened. Let me help. Before I could respond, the front door creaked open, and Ryan stepped outside, looking confused. He froze when he saw me standing with Amanda. His face paled, realization hitting like a thunderbolt. Jack, what the hell? Save it, I snapped. We're done playing your games. Amanda crossed her arms, voice icy. You have 5 seconds to explain why your affair partner's husband is standing in front of our house. Ryan stammered, eyes darting between us like a cornered animal. This isn't what it looks like. That's exactly what it looks like, I said coldly. We know about Emily. We know about the baby. We know about Rachel. His mouth opened, then closed, as if grasping for an excuse but finding none. You're signing the paternity affidavit, I said firmly, or I'll make sure every court in the state knows what kind of man you are. Amanda stepped closer, her voice deadly calm. If you don't, I'll ruin you myself. Ryan's face crumpled, his shoulders sagging like a deflated balloon. I'll sign it, he mumbled. Whatever you want. For the first time in weeks, I felt something close to relief. He was trapped. The lies were unraveling faster than he could spin them. As I turned to leave, Amanda's voice stopped me. Jack, thank you. I met her gaze, fierce and unbroken despite everything. You deserve better than him. Her eyes gleamed with unshed tears. So do you. 2 days after confronting Ryan, my lawyer, Eric, confirmed that he'd signed the paternity affidavit. The court filings were ironclad. Ryan was legally recognized as the father, severing any possibility of me being dragged into custody or child support battles. It should have felt like a victory, but it didn't. Instead, I felt hollow. Winning the legal war didn't erase what Emily had done, or undo the years of lies she'd built our marriage on. That same evening, I got an unexpected call from Amanda. Her voice was steady but strained. I thought you should know. I kicked Ryan out. Good, I said simply. He tried playing the victim, she continued bitterly. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Same garbage as before. Her anger radiated through the phone, sharp and searing. I let him lie to me for years. Not anymore. I admired her strength, even as I felt the weight of my own situation pressing down. What will you do now? File for divorce, she said without hesitation. I've already started. I let out a slow breath. I wish I'd done it sooner. There was a beat of silence before she spoke again, softer this time. You did what you could, until you couldn't anymore. Her words hit deeper than she knew. After hanging up, I poured myself a drink and stared out the window of my cold, empty rental. Amanda had walked away from Ryan without looking back. She didn't wait for apologies or promises, she acted. And here I was, still tethered to Emily's lies by something I couldn't quite name. What was I waiting for? Before I could answer that question, a sharp knock came at my door. My stomach twisted. Only a handful of people knew where I was staying. I opened the door, and there she was. Emily. Her face was pale, eyes rimmed with dark circles, as though she hadn't slept in days. Her hands trembled as she clutched a worn leather purse against her chest. Jack, please, she whispered. I need to talk. Every instinct told me to slam the door in her face, to shut her out the way she'd shut me out for years. But something in her shattered expression stopped me. Against my better judgment, I stepped aside. You have 5 minutes. She walked in hesitantly, her eyes flickering around the room like she expected to be ambushed. I'm not here to lie, she began, voice trembling. I know I can't fix what I've done, but I need you to know the truth. I crossed my arms, heart pounding. You lied to me, Emily, for 10 years. What truth could possibly matter now? Tears spilled down her cheeks. I was scared, Jack, so scared you'd leave me. I scoffed. You left me the moment you crawled into his bed. Her face crumpled, but she didn't break. I thought if I could keep it a secret, if I could hold on to you, maybe I could still have us. My throat tightened, anger surging. There is no us. You killed it the moment you chose him. Her voice cracked. I know, but I never stopped loving you. Even when I was with him, I thought of you. Her words sliced deeper than any knife. How does she? After all she'd done, she still thought she could claim love? I took a slow, deliberate step toward her. You don't love someone and lie to them for a decade. You don't love someone and carry their baby while pretending it's mine. Emily sobbed, sinking into the nearest chair like her legs had given out. I was selfish. I know that now, but I'm still in love with you. Her confession hit like a freight train, knocking the air from my lungs. But this time, it didn't matter. I stepped back, shaking my head slowly. You're in love with control, Emily. You're in love with what I used to be before you destroyed it. Her eyes widened, desperation clawing at her. Please, Jack, don't let this be the end. I stared at her, feeling nothing. No rage, no sorrow, just cold, unyielding certainty. It is the end, I said quietly, and it's exactly what you deserve. With that, I opened the door, waiting. For a moment, she just stared at me, pleading, broken. But finally, she rose on trembling legs and walked out, without another word. I shut the door behind her, locking it with shaking hands. And just like that, I was free. After Emily left that night, the silence in my apartment felt different, still heavy, but no longer suffocating. The door was closed. For good. Days turned into weeks as the divorce process pushed forward. Eric kept me updated. Emily had stopped contesting the paternity test after Ryan officially claimed the child. She signed the divorce papers without a fight, probably realizing there was no game left to play. The final hearing came faster than expected. I walked into the courtroom in a tailored suit, calm and resolute. Emily was there too, dressed conservatively, eyes downcast. She didn't speak, didn't even glance my way. The judge reviewed the evidence, her infidelity, the DNA test results, her financial misconduct, and ruled in my favor. Full ownership of the house. No alimony. No shared debt. Clean and final. When the gavel struck, I felt an immense weight lift from my chest. It was over, not just legally, but emotionally. The life we'd built together had burned to ash, and I was finally walking away. Life after destruction isn't like the movies. There's no triumphant montage or sudden clarity. There's just time. Empty, slow-moving, heavy time. After the court officially dissolved my marriage, I thought I'd feel something more dramatic. Closure, peace, even joy. Instead, I felt numb. But there was work to do. The house, my house, had become a symbol of everything I'd lost. Walking through its quiet halls was like touring a museum of betrayal. The once cozy living room where Emily and I would binge-watch shows felt cold. The kitchen where we used to cook together seemed hollow. And the nursery, that was the hardest. I couldn't leave it the way it was, a painful reminder of the child that was never mine. So, one Saturday, I grabbed some paint cans, a scraper, and a sledgehammer. The baby blue walls came down first. Every stroke of the roller felt like peeling back a layer of hurt. The crib and baby clothes I'd picked out were donated to a local charity. I didn't need anything tying me to that lie. I turned the nursery into a home office, clean, modern, mine. No memories attached. One evening, about 3 months after the divorce, I was sorting through old photo albums stuffed in the back of the closet. I'd planned to toss them, but curiosity got the better of me. Flipping through pictures of holidays, vacations, and random moments, I searched for clues, anything that might show the cracks I'd missed. But all I saw were two people who seemed happy, seemed in love, seemed. It hit me how much of my life had been built on assumptions and trust. Trust that Emily had methodically chipped away while keeping me blind. For a moment, anger surged again, burning hot and fierce, but it faded quickly. I was tired of being angry. It kept me trapped in the past, and I was done living there. I boxed up the albums and drove to a donation center. I couldn't rewrite my past, but I could stop letting it define me. One Saturday afternoon, while restocking my bookshelves, my phone buzzed. Amanda. We hadn't talked much since our emotional confrontation with Ryan, though she texted me updates about her divorce. Something about hearing from her felt different, comforting. Hey, I answered. Jack, she said, her voice warm but hesitant. I was in your area. Wanted to see if you had time for coffee? I smiled despite myself. Sure. There's a place down the street, Harbor Roasters. Meet you there? Perfect. Half an hour later, she walked into the cafe, looking lighter than I'd ever seen her, like she'd shed a weight she'd been carrying for years. Her hair was pulled back, and she wore a soft blue sweater that matched her eyes. Hey, she said, smiling tentatively. Hey, I replied, motioning her to sit. The conversation flowed easily, about work, hobbies, even the weird, mundane parts of adjusting to life post-divorce. No heavy emotions, no digging into old wounds. Just two people finding comfort in shared experiences. At one point, she laughed, a real, carefree laugh that lit up the room. It hit me how long it had been since I'd felt good. As we finished our drinks, she glanced at me thoughtfully. It's nice, talking like this. It is, I agreed. Feels normal. Normal's underrated, she said with a small smile. After that coffee, Amanda and I kept in touch more often. Calls, texts, the occasional meetup. Nothing serious, just easy. But there was something unspoken growing between us, built on mutual respect, shared scars, and understanding. One night, after weeks of tiptoeing around the past, I finally asked, "How are the kids handling everything?" Her expression softened. Better now. They ask about him sometimes, but they're resilient. I nodded, understanding too well how kids can adapt faster than adults. And you? She asked, her gaze steady. Are you okay? The question caught me off guard. People had asked me that before, but Amanda's voice held genuine concern, not politeness. I think I'm getting there, I admitted. It's been a process. She reached across the table, resting her hand over mine. A small, grounding gesture. You don't have to rush. Healing isn't a race. Months passed. Amanda and I grew closer, not through grand romantic gestures, but through small, meaningful moments. Dinners cooked together, walks along the pier, quiet evenings where no words were needed. One summer evening, we sat on my back porch, watching the sunset over the water. Amanda leaned her head against my shoulder, her breath steady and calm. I didn't think I'd ever trust someone again, she whispered. Neither did I admitted, wrapping my arm around her. But this feels different. She nodded. Because we know. We've seen the worst, and we're still here. The following winter, after nearly a year of rebuilding, Amanda and I made an unspoken decision. We stopped living in the past. We were moving forward. One snowy evening, we visited a small art gallery downtown. Amanda had always loved painting, and seeing her light up while explaining the details of each piece felt right. As we walked home, she turned to me suddenly, her eyes bright with hope. Jack, do you ever think about what's next? For us. I took her hands gently. I think about it all the time. She smiled, tears glinting in her eyes. Me too. Looking back, it still feels surreal. How much can change in such a short time? The lies, the betrayal, the anger. They don't control me anymore. They're just parts of my story, not the ending. Emily? I don't know where she is or what became of her. I don't need to know. She's a closed chapter, one I survived. Amanda and I built something real. Not perfect, not fairy tale, but real. We faced our pasts, owned our mistakes, and chose something better. Because that's the thing about heartbreak. You can survive it. You can rebuild. You can love again, even after the worst.